F sharp, A sharp, revisited.
Hello everyone and welcome to F sharp A sharp Revisited, the music review podcast where we see what's up with the recent music releases. I am Joe, the music critic supervillain, and before we went on hiatus I kept giving Nick new nicknames, but they got worse and worse, and I think I'm giving up.
Oh, good.
So I think we're just going to have to call him the Upstanding Civillian Nick.
Thank you.
So, yes.
I'm glad you think so highly of me.
Of course I do. Of course I do. So yeah, we're back after a bit of a break.
Joe has recovered after his legendary fight.
Yeah.
His wrists are completely back to normal. Well, as much as they...
as much as they can be at the moment. So, yeah.
That means that we're back.
We're back.
Very
we're
excited
here
to be back.
Yay.
Very excited to talk about music again.
Yeah. And I thought we'd break us in lightly.
Yeah.
By starting off with Ninja Sex Party, because it's a light-hearted album and I'm guessing it's one that we both quite like.
Yeah. It's a comedy album, if you haven't guessed from the title. The new album, 6th studio album, Cool Patrol. It is made from the minds of Danny Sexbang and Ninja Brian.
Yep.
It's the most fun I've had listening to an album this year, that's for sure. It's 15 tracks, 38 minutes long, so not a particularly strenuous commitment to have to listen to it. And a few of those tracks are sort of interlude tracks. The beginning and end tracks are quite short. There are a couple of skits on there, and most of the tracks aren't that long. Leading up to this album, on their last one I believe, which was a covers album, Under the Covers Part 2, they've employed a backing band, which means that now I feel like they're able to make the style of music that they've wanted to make all along, because previously it's been very keyboard heavy, because I imagine that's what Brian is more competent at. So now they've got this backing band, they're able to create the glam rock that they so clearly have wanted to make this entire time. And I think just straight away you can hear all of the performances on this album are absolutely stellar.
Yeah. They're cheesy, but they're great at the same time.
I mean, there are so many points on the album which make me just want to punch the air with how just awesome they sound.
Yeah, agreed.
But then you've got that, but like I said, it's a comedy album, and I'm not entirely convinced that it's always as funny as Danny and Brian think it is. I noticed that 33% of the songs on the album end with Danny getting hurt.
Yeah,
there are some
tricks. There are some tricks that they rely on, aren't there?
I made the point that they realise that repetition does kill jokes. So the fact that any song with a jokey chorus will repeat the chorus, but with the lyrics altered. Yeah. I like that, but. I mean,
the Cool Patrol dance does that really well, I think.
Danny getting hurt does start to wear thin very quickly.
But then again, on the one track, Romance Novel, I think that track just makes me laugh every single time. Whereas some of the other skits, like GFY, kind of wear thin pretty quickly. Every single time.
For me, it's the opposite. I think Romance Novel is probably my least favourite track on the album because
sad face.
it often just fails to make me laugh. Though I will say that the line, she grabbed him on the penisiest part of his body, it does make me chuckle a lot.
Yeah,
GFY, I do think once you've heard it once, I mean, the joke's never going to be the same afterwards, but it's catchy, so I can forgive it.
In fact, I think this album is at its best when the catchiness of the songs are on point as well. It's not relying... I mean, it is funny. It is a funny album, but it's not just relying on the humour. It's relying on the compositionmanship as well.
And I like the fact that, I mean, the gimmick of Ninja Sex Party is that Danny Sexbang, whose real name is Dan Avidan, I will just call him Dan from now on. Dan is meant to be this sort of sex-crazed sex god.
The ultimate nymphomaniac, really.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of glad that there are some tracks on this album that don't go down that route, because after, this is their 6th album, the gimmick does start to grate a little bit. But then you've got tracks like Cool Patrol. That's one of my favourite on the album.
That is so catchy.
It's ridiculously catchy.
What I just love about it is just how it just transcends into this clean major chord in the chorus. That is so...
It's a song about the Cool Patrol that Danny is the head of, seeing this kid being picked on at school and then attempting to make him cool so he can get those bullies back. And their idea of how to make someone cool is just by doing this rather cheesy dance routine. And then
So
it sort
funny.
of escalates to the point where he's grabbing a bird from the sky to eat it so he can get its power of flight. It's a very silly song and really sets a precedent for the rest of the album.
Yeah, I think a major point of this album, it is silly. It is childish in a way. You got to expect that.
But as I was saying, even when the jokes do fall flat, they're generally the compositions do really make up for it. Like on the track "Release the Kraken," which the joke is one of the weakest of the album, I think, with the idea that the Kraken isn't very useful at slaying its enemies. It gets a bit boring, but
it's epic.
Oh my god, it's got the most epic backing I can imagine, and I mean their songwriting really seems to have ramped up as well, because that song goes through various time signature changes as well, which is just awesome. And then the final solo that goes over the end chorus is just nuts.
Yeah,
it's absolute madness. I just wish that the joke of the song was better.
Yeah, I think with that song, I think that would have benefited with a video.
I did think the same thing.
Because I don't think it's got one at the moment.
It strikes me that they wrote that song with a video in mind for it.
Yeah, I think that it does get a bit like that on one or two of the tracks, I have to say. But for the most part, the album does work as a standalone album.
Even though the songs most of the songs came out already on YouTube with music videos attached to them, but I think all of those work without pretty well.
I mean, there's maybe one or two lines that kind of need a bit of a visual pointer, but other than that, it's not too much of a bother.
Well, going back to compositions for a little bit, I've talked about the solos being amazing, and I think the solo on Danny Don't You Know is one of my favourite moments in music this year. It's incredible. I'll come back to that song in a bit because it's my favourite on the album.
Same, but we'll get to that.
But I really need to highlight, first of all, the bass work on the album is so funky and crisp.
Oh, especially on the funkier songs like Mansion Party and the other one.
Smooth Talker.
Yeah, Smooth Talker.
Yeah.
I mean, even if the humour of Smooth Talker I didn't really get, it just seemed to be funny words.
Yeah, but the
bass
line on that song.
But the backing was
the horns
pure
as
mint.
well.
Yeah.
And then also I need to call out Danny's vocals, which are exquisitely and endearingly underwhelming for as far as good vocals go. There isn't all of this there isn't a huge amount of showmanship with flashy vibrato and huge amounts of notes being hit in small amounts of time, but he makes up for it with his vocal harmony work. The layers of vocals on each song just make them sound amazing. And the bit in Danny Don't You Know where all of the backing cuts out and he just sings "You Are a Superstar Tonight" is it gives me such goosebumps.
Yeah, well, his vocal stylings fits well with the cross between making good music and it being a comedy album.
Oh yeah,
so
for sure,
works perfectly.
Well, let's talk about some tracks that we liked and didn't like then.
Well, Danny Don't You Know, that song just makes me cry.
Oh, Danny Don't You Know is it's one of the points where I'm glad that they sort of moved slightly away from songs exclusively about sex and boning and the like. Even though there are plenty of sexual references in the song, but there was just it's a really powerful, empowering song.
Yeah,
for sure. Just saying, embrace your inner nerd. You'll feel weird, but just be you, and it's fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to care what people think of you because you will mature into your true self, and that will be awesome. Yeah. It's got amazing lines on it, like you're just going through an awkward phase from 12 to 29.
I tell you what, Nick, I can only hope that my awkward phase ends at 29. So yeah, I mean that song really struck a chord with me because I just think if I in 10 years' time, what if I made it, whatever that means in the world, and I'm comfortable with myself? Like I'd want to write a song like that to me as a child, as me now. You know what I mean? It's really touching, and even though the lyrics do have that dose of bragging in them as well, it works with the comedy, and it is still very heartwarming. I mean,
it's sort of a self-deprecating bragging as well, like the lines, you step on stage and they come alive, no one cares that you're 35.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, he doesn't look it, but Danny is actually 40, which is... Wow.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, he's very old for how he looks.
Wow.
Other favourites for me, though, I would probably say Courtship of the Mermaid is the song that consistently makes me laugh the most. With Danny's attempts to court this mermaid who he thinks is so beautiful, which amounts to him having Ninja Brian wrap him in pizza and chuck him at her.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
I like
silly.
that one. Maybe less so for the joke, but more so for the variation in backing at that point, because it really does, take cues from Renaissance music, and it works really nicely.
And then Mansion Party as well, I think, really redeems itself with the end. And it goes back to the choruses changing each time. It starts off Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Non-Stop Dancing Through the Night, It's a Mansion Party, that Tiger Super Tight, and ends up with Can't Stop, Won't Stop, Non-Stop, Running for My Life, It's a Mansion Party, I hope we all make it out alive.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling saucy, we'll grab some spears by candlelight, It's a Mansion
Yeah.
Party, we're dropping pandas left and right.
Yeah, I mean that's a great tracking, because I do think the album does lose a little bit of steam towards the end, but I do really like Mansion Party, and it does have one of my favourite lyrics, "Don't touch my diamond fridge, it costs more than the country of Peru."
Yeah.
I love that every single time. Another one I liked, Heart Boner.
Oh, Heart Boner. And I mean, I've got to give a shout out because our good friend Stacey from Stacey and Barry and Stacey's podcast, Pop Culture Parlour, I'll say it right one day, has pointed out that song does actually come across as a sort of ace anthem in a way, that I've got a heart boner for you. I think that's really nice.
Yeah. It's really nice, and it's really sweet at the same time.
Yeah, it's really endearing, and it really just supersedes the sexual joke around it. It's just a lovely.
Well, it's almost a
endearing
subversion
track.
of it. So
and
it's really nice.
The strings in it, it's so just lovely.
It's very lush. It's a lush track. Like, you wouldn't expect it from a comedy band to be able to pull out like a really well done arrangement like that. But you know what? Hats off to them.
And I mean, the fact that they can make the sort of bridge chant of ha 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 boner, it just sounds so good. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, this album is at its best when it's making me sing along to these ridiculous lyrics.
But as far as tracks I wasn't so fond of go, I've already mentioned Romance Novel. It doesn't really make me laugh, and once again ends with Danny getting hurt. Ugh. But then I've also got to say Orgy for One. I don't hate it because it's catchy and it makes me sing along, but the joke premise of it, of girls rejecting him, has been done before by Flight of the Conchords on their song Carol Brown in exactly the same way. With listing off women and what they've done to avoid him. Yeah,
I mean, I like the song because it is catchy in that respect. But once you know the joke, it's basically the same kind of thing throughout the whole song.
There's also the fact I can't quite get over, which is that the chorus sounds so much like Heaven is a Place on Earth. They're just so much, and every time I hear it, I just think, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love both songs, but any point where it sounds like a band's ripped off another band just gets to me.
It's a sticking point. I mean, I want to highlight one more track, Date Night. I do like Date Night.
Date Night's a great track.
Let's kill some guy tonight.
Something that really impressed me about that song is, I mean, the joke of it being it starts off talking about their first date, but each chorus gets progressively more extreme, like let's steal a car tonight, let's steal some art tonight, let's kill a guy tonight, and then it goes let's kill 5 guys tonight, then goes up a key and goes let's kill 10 guys tonight, and then he goes, this is first date, pull on brakes, goes down a key, let's kill 5 guys tonight.
That is literally my favourite point. That's like my favourite moment of the album, I'd say.
It's just compositional genius.
Yeah.
It's great. I mean, overall, I do recognise this album does have some problems. It's not always as funny as it tries to be, though it is very funny at times. And I do think that it could have trimmed some of the skits. I mean, we haven't even mentioned like Ninja Brian Goes to Soccer Practice, which is just there.
Yeah, it's another one that gets, the joke after the first listen.
Yeah, and the intro and outro are a bit meh. To be honest, I could have done without them. I know they've done it on every album, but so I would give this a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm feeling a 7. I think in terms of how much I'm entertained, I'd give it an 8, but I guess it's just docking a point for those few instances that kind of want a visual reference or, those one or two skits. But I would still, very much recommend it for people looking for comedy.
It's the album I've listened to most this year. And it hasn't been out that long, so,
So yeah, it's got its entertainment value.
Yeah, so kudos to Ninja Sex Party. Now, last time, and you may not remember this because it was a while ago for our hiatus, we had a quiz where I made Joe listen to some of his favourite songs but warped. Mm-hmm. And Joe managed to get enough of them guessed correctly that I had to cover a song of his choice.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah. You were so close, you almost didn't get the last one, which
Yeah.
was one that you played bass on.
Yeah,
which
well,
made
it was
me
as
laugh.
soon as the bass came in, I was just like, I recognise this.
So anyway, Joe has made me cover Johto Journeys, the theme music to the Johto section of the Pokemon anime.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I am exceptionally proud of myself for this one. This is my favourite thing I've ever done. So
Yeah, I've already heard it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very, very proud of my boy Nick.
So we will just slot it in now, and you can all listen and enjoy. And if you don't enjoy it, I will be beyond devastated. I may not come back to podcasting.
Everybody wants to be a master. Everybody wants to show their skills. Everybody wants to get there faster. Make their way to the top of the hill. Each time you try, you're gonna get a little bit better. Each step you climb, it's one more step up the ladder. It's a whole new world we live in. It's a whole new way to see. It's a whole new place with a brand new attitude. But you still gotta catch them all and be the best that you can be. Pokemon Johto. Everybody wants to make a statement. Everybody needs to call their mark. Stand alone in the victory circle. Stick their claim when the music starts. Give it all you've got. You can be the very best ever. Take your best shots. What you learn will come together. It's a whole new world we live in. It's a whole new way to see. It's a whole new place with a brand new attitude. But you still gotta catch them all and be the best that you can be. Pokemon Johto. Pokemon Johto. It's a whole new world we live in. It's a whole new way to see.
enjoyed it.
I did.
I already told you to enjoy it, so you better have done. Joe, do you want to introduce the next group? Person?
So we have the new album by Haru. Well, I say new album. It's a debut album after a few EPs by Haru Nemuri, who is a Japanese songwriter. She's new on the scene. Her new album Harutosyura came out a little earlier this year. This album just gets so much better and better with every listen I give to it, and at this point I haven't been more excited about like a new solo artist just in a long time. I think what I like most about the album is how she crafts a unique presence for herself in the album. And of course she has influences like noise rock bands like Midori, Boredoms, 385, etc. But she very much comes from the Shino Ringo school of songwriting, which is, well, I'd describe it as merging different genres, but in a way that captures the essence of both, but in a way that makes it sound like one distinct sound rather than two piled on top of each other. And of course that's been done before with noise rock and kind of techno pop, and regular pop, which are kind of the main three within this album. But I can't really think of anything before that combines the three of them quite as seamlessly. And it took me a while to kind of realise this, but I think a lot of that has to do with her vocal performance, which I think is very unique and does tie in all the elements of the album together in a very satisfying way. So her vocal style, her melodic work is very limited, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It works with the music, but you'll notice that she doesn't have a very wide range. So her melodies don't really go up or down and all that much, but she also has what people have been calling a rapping style as well. I would actually disagree on that, because while I describe it more as a very fast-paced spoken word that she does.
That's how I feel about it.
Because the rhythms she uses doesn't really match kind of Western hip-hop, or even Japanese hip-hop for that matter. And by having her melodies and her, quote, rapping style that way, she seems to be able to seamlessly weave in and out the two. And the way she combines that with aggression when singing over noise rock tracks like Make More Noise of You or the title track Harutosyura in that more aggressive way works really nicely. And when she works it over more techno pop tracks like Underground, you hear those softer moments coming through really nicely. But then basically on every other track on the album, it's like a exploration of the mixture of the two and how that can work with her vocal style and the amount of passion and aggression she can work within the genre. And it creates this, what I see as this very cohesive body of work that's very satisfying to listen to from start to finish.
But I point out, one of the things I like most about this album is the fact that there is a huge focus on texture rather than melody in a lot of the cases of the songs, and I think that's such a cool choice for an album that's billed as a J-pop album, because J-pop is considered to be like really sugary and melodious.
Very melodic.
My take on it, and it pulls it off really well. The production really is great for it. The crisp guitars and really punchy drums make those textures work. And any melody that is used in the instruments is used sparingly, so that at the points that they do use it, it just works so well. Like towards the end of Lost Planet, those really sort of high guitars.
She knows how to pull off a climax. I could list basically half the track list.
And I think, agreeing with you, Haru's vocals are a real standout.
A standout, and for me they're just so unique.
She brings a really catchy energy to every single track, and she's just so thoroughly entertaining to boot. I mean, her vocal stylings do range along with the music. Just within the one track, which you're going to pronounce for me, Sakai
Watari Kaishiteo Kore.
That one. I mean, it ranges from sort of your more traditional J-pop fare to rap, like the rapping, inverted commas, and frenzied yelling towards the end, and it all works on the same track.
Yeah, I mean that song is pretty much my joint favourite, and you've also in that song they've got these like, I can't tell whether they're vocals or synths, but there are like two lines of those building on top of each other towards the end against all the guitars, and her rapping gets more and more kind of like a tornado as it goes through the track, as it does with several others, and it's so damn satisfying.
I don't think there's a single bad track on the album. I'd say, I mean, if I had to pick one that I liked less than the others, it would probably be Underground. But I don't know. I don't think there's a single bad track on the album, which is amazing considering how many stylings make it into the album.
Yeah.
8-bit pop ranging to almost post-hardcore. But with how frantic the album sounds to me, rushing through all these styles of songs, because it is a fairly short album as well, it's 37 minutes, I sometimes find it quite difficult to get into, like get a grasp on the tracks as they're coming and really like get to grips with the album. I mean, sometimes it just rushes past me. I mean, there are a few standouts that every single time I will just love to listen to, like the one which I just mentioned, which you're going to pronounce for me again.
Sakai Watari Kaishide Okure.
Yeah, which is one of my favourite songs of the year. But there isn't a single bad track on the album. I'm happy to listen to it. I wish I could get more out of it.
Okay. It's funny you should say that. Have you looked at a translation of the lyrics at all?
No.
Okay, because I think I might have been at the same place as you when I first listened to it, but then it was was it a week ago, maybe? I did actually look at a translation of the lyrics, and then, like, this album just bumped up for me completely. And sorry, you're going to say something.
I was going to say, this is my personal opinion, and I mean, if you want to do things differently to me, that's fine. But if an album's got a language barrier for me, I don't always like to look at the lyrics straight off, because I like to see what the album has to offer to someone who isn't able to instantly connect with that. So say with Sigur Ros's albums, most of the time I've not actually looked at the lyrics for them, because I want to experience it as if it's intended for someone else, and I just happen to be sort of spectating. And it's the same with this album.
Yeah.
I'm sure the lyrics are fantastic, but it's not something that I intend to particularly look into until perhaps a later date.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely fair enough. But I do, because I did find the lyrics particularly affecting in the album, I do kind of want to mention them at least a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
So I should say I don't speak Japanese. I was reading a translation, so I was going off that, and also because of that, I haven't really noted down like the concrete lines that were in the translation, more the abstract that I was getting out of it. But this album is incredibly romantic, and I don't mean romantic with a small r, I mean romantic with capital R, as in it takes a lot from romantic poetry, like the metaphysical poetry. Like there's one song, Yoru Yoidata, which literally translates as night swimming. It's her swimming in the night in order to try and connect with the world, and her connecting with the world makes a pretty huge theme in the album, because a lot of it is her feeling so much emptiness in it. But yeah, a lot of the songs are about her trying to find oneness with the natural world and the world around her. There are actually quite a few tracks that question the existence of God. It's actually marked straight off with Make More Noise Off You. There's a reference in there. And then again, in one of my favourite tracks, Sakai Watari Kaishide Okure, the most difficult one to say. I practiced it. And that song is so affecting to me, because so much of the album is based around her trying to connect with the world, only finding emptiness. And in that song, I think that title translates as we have to take back the world. With the absence of God, we need to actually do something to take back the world. And that is such a powerful moment to me, especially when some of the earlier tracks, like Narashte, it starts off with this scene about someone who's had a knife in their back and there's a pool of blood on the floor. And like in the song, it seems like Haru is witnessing it and she's feeling so much emptiness inside, like what is going on. And there's something quite interesting in the way that she uses distortion to relate the lyrics to the music. Distortion. Yeah, well, that song is basically a constant build, and then she has the chorus which starts with distortion, then a line. It's like the emptiness of the world is the distortion as it comes up in the music, and it works up to this incredible climax where, yeah, she's just repeating distortion over and over again.
Getting
and I think,
more intense.
Yeah, and I think reading a translation of those lyrics really kind of bumps that song up to me to a kind of joint favourite, and it's such a great moment. And it also makes the closing track, Rock and Roll wa Shinanai, which translates as Rock and Roll Won't Die, as not just heck yeah rock and roll, but heck yeah rock and roll because we need something to fill the void. And again, I'm reading from a translation, so there's only so much I can say about the concrete details, but the lyricism, I found something that has really elevated the album for me. And even if I only remember it in the abstract, now that when I come back to the tracks, it's what I'm hearing from them as well. I can hear it in the vocal performances even. Like she gives some really like nasty shouts in the album as well when she's getting intense. And now I can hear kind of the context around those shouts, and it makes so much more sense to me.
I mean, I haven't read the lyrics, as you know, but I can imagine with some of the points, like on the final track, there are points where her singing is just completely out of tune with the rest of the composition, and that just makes more sense, I can imagine now.
And towards the end of that song, it's like she's getting out of breath and she's exhausting herself. Like the album, like the emotion of the album is actually quite exhausting when you consider some of the topics. But yeah, I found it deep. I found it deep, man.
So, favourite tracks? We've already mentioned song with long name.
Sakai Watari Kaishite Okure.
Which is, I mean, it's the best. It's the catchiest song on the album for sure. The breakneck spoken word in the bridge is just so intense. And the way I saw it, I mean, this is probably completely not what you get having read the lyrics, but it sounds like the theme tune to the anti-hero animation I never knew I wanted to star in.
You know what? I think that's all right, you know. That's a good interpretation.
And the melodies on that track are highlighted by the fact that they're sort of sparse on the rest of the album, and it just separates the song in such a great way. Yeah.
Sakai Watari Kaishite Okure, baby.
Yeah. And then I'd also give a shout out to Lost Planet. It's one I like a lot. I mean, it's got the best drums on the album, and you know how I feel about drums.
Well, the drums are pretty good because a lot of the textures are polyrhythmic, and the drums, there are quite a lot of drums that keep to the straight beat, but in quite an interesting way, and it allows the other kind of rhythmic elements to play off them quite well.
Yeah, which is great because the guitar rhythms on the track are top notch as well. It's just slightly offbeat, which makes them so interesting.
Yeah.
And there's that really mournful keyboard sound that perpetuates the song, and it really elevates the mood of the track.
Other favourites for me, Yumi Wami Yu. It's nice how that's piano based. It has that ascending rhythm, and it constantly builds up. And there are some really nice hooks in that song as well. And the way she gets particularly flurried in that song with her vocal delivery, I really liked. And it kind of goes back to Narashta with the knife metaphor. So it works really nicely. Narashta, I think, is a great song, as is pretty much all of them.
Yeah, like I said, no bad track on the album. No
bad track. Just on the point of one bad track, when I didn't listen to the lyrics, I did actually think the choice of Claire de Lune, which she covers for one of the interlude tracks, was a bit of an asinine choice. But then after looking at the lyrics and how it reflected romantic poetry, suddenly it made complete sense to use something from that era. And then in that interlude track, it kind of fades out into distortion. So it's like a microcosmic metaphor for what's going on in the rest of the album, which I thought, after I read the lyrics, I was just, okay, that's a perfect touch.
I think the interlude tracks work better on this album than they did for NSP.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the joining between 1, 2. Is that what it was called?
Z.
I don't know how she intended to pronounce it, but that going into 19 flows exceptionally well.
Yeah.
The only other song I want to shout out is "Make More Noise of You," the very first song on the album, because as soon as it started, it caught my attention. It's so punchy.
I think wrapping up my thoughts on this album, you can probably tell that I'm very, very enthusiastic about this album. I've absolutely loved it. I've probably listened to it as much as any other album this year. I definitely feel justified in giving a 9 out of 10 to it.
I still like this album a lot, but I'm only going to give it a 7. I hope you'll understand, Joe.
I will try.
No, it's not a bad album at all. This is just my own personal. I personally wasn't able to grasp onto it as much as I think you were. That might change with time.
We'll see.
It's an album I will definitely come back to.
Yeah.
Moving on to something completely different.
Completely.
The new Denzel Curry album.
Someone who actually raps.
Yeah, Taboo by Denzel Curry. He is a Floridian rapper. This is his third studio album. It is 13 tracks and 44 minutes. So this album is split into 3 sections, and the first part is light, the second part is grey, and the third part is dark. You know, getting progressively darker as the album goes on. And, I mean, it doesn't really. That's my first problem with the album.
Okay.
It does to an extent, but there are tracks in the first section which are darker than parts in the second section.
Well,
tracks in the second section that are darker than tracks in the third section.
Well, I think I agree with you, because one of my biggest sticking point with this album, what it is, because the opening track, Taboo, it sets a thematic precedent, and in that song, Denzel relates about having this relationship with someone who was abused as a child, and it does open this opportunity to explore this emotionally complex and taboo subject. But then
it sort of goes into it a bit on Black Balloons, but then soon as that track's over, it just goes into a brag track.
And then in the middle section, there's a lot of songs about, you know, fame putting a wedge between friends, and I'm just thinking, these topics aren't taboo. Like, a lot of rappers have actually talked about these things.
Yeah. I mean, there's the topic on Taboo about forbidden love, which I'm assuming is that this girl was underage at one point when he was in love with her. I think the vibe I get is that it was something like he was 18 and she was 16 or 17, so it's, you know, sort of young love, but technically illegal, but, you know, close enough.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's meant to give off, like, paedophilia vibes or anything like that. But it's, like you said, it's not that taboo of an album.
Yeah, and sometimes I think maybe it is a little bit unfair to kind of judge it, to kind of cast it in a negative light because of that, because I do think there are some good tracks on this album, you know, aside from that, but it does kind of make me think, you know, just a little bit more thematic consistency, you know, would have made me a little bit less wanting more of that theme.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some good stuff before I talk about my biggest problem with the album. Denzel Curry's performance on the album, his flow and delivery is always great.
It is on point.
He's a fantastic rapper. He knows exactly how to vary the experience of listening to any given moment of a track. He's got complete control of his speed and intensity and knows exactly when to bring it up and let it down. On top of that, the production and beats on most of the tracks are I mean, for the trap genre, are all pretty fantastic.
It hasn't come up on my phone, but I highlighted Sumo Green because the beat on that track was great, and it's hard to come across like genuinely interesting trap influenced music, if I'm going to be honest. So yeah, I definitely a thumbs up for that.
I will accept that the beat on Sumo is great, even if I don't like that track. But moving on. The guest spots he gets on the album, there aren't any hugely prolific people on this album. JPEG Mafia is probably the biggest name, but every single one of them actually brings something fresh and interesting to the track. It's not like they're just there for the sake of it, which I do respect. I mean, Gold Link's verse on Black Balloons is great because it's so different, and then you've got Zilla Kami's verse on Vengeance, which is just scary with how raw it is.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Vengeance is one of my favourites on the album.
Yeah, Vengeance is my favourite on the album.
So yeah, agreed.
I mean, the harder tracks in particular really benefit from such hard-hitting production. Like I said, Vengeance is almost scary, but then he's really capable of sort of the lighter, sort of smooth, dreamy tracks as well. Say, Black Balloons, I mentioned.
Yeah.
It's really just, you drift along with it.
Lovely jazzy touches.
Great bass work in it as well. And while it wasn't one of my favourites, I'd say the same about Super Saiyan Superman.
See, that was my joint least favourite.
Yeah, I don't like that track, but I think the production's all right.
See, that's the thing I didn't like about it, because that track has this really weird vibrating thing, and I'm going off memory here because I could only listen to it once or twice. Yeah. It was giving me a headache listening to it. If I'm going to be completely honest, on repeated listens, I just skipped over that track after like 20 seconds. I really struggled with that one.
No. This is sort of talking about bad tracks is going to lead me into my biggest problem with the album, which is that the lyrics on it, some of them, not all of them, sometimes they're all right, but more than there should be, are just horrible, just really bad.
Have you got some to quote out to us?
Cash Maniac, for a start, has the worst lyrics on the album. You've got serving my fans all my dope because they addicts, haters mad because I'm on top like an attic. Then you've also got life is so golden, that's how I'm living, look at my trunk jumping out like it ribbit. Devil gone hate, blurring my vision, that's me at my lowest, no Peter Griffin.
Someone called Jaden Smith.
I've not listened to that song since.
Oh, dear.
I really liked this album until I read the lyrics. But the worst on the album by far comes in Sumo. And I hate this because he delivers this line fantastically. But Eclipse, wanna take all my chips, wanna pop off the clip like hummus he dip. I mean, I've only taken.
That's the funniest shit I've heard all year.
I've only taken a selection because I mean that there are points like this all over the album which are just horribly bad. Like I don't feel like he really proofread his own lyrics.
Yeah, I mean, one point I am going to make, because I haven't really noted down many lyrics, but towards the end, in the last few tracks, I did write down, I'm enjoying this more now that I'm not paying attention to the lyrics.
Yeah.
Because I do think the variety in the beats and how well they're pulled off and how well his delivery works is the main selling point on this album.
I mean, with the lyrics, I think sometimes he gets a bit too carried away with the hooks. Some of them just take up too much of the song. Like, that's the reason I don't like Sumo, because the hook on that is repetitive, a bit too long, and repeated too many times. It just annoys me. And I mean, I just think it's an incredibly annoying brag track, to be honest.
I mean, I thought Cash Maniac was a little bit more annoying, but you know.
No, I hate Cash Maniac too. It's just a dull take on the I made it rap trope.
Yeah.
And it's probably got his weakest flow on the album as well.
Most likely.
And I've mentioned the lyrics.
I just want to point out one more track that I just couldn't listen to, and that was Sirens. It was that rattle that goes throughout the entire track. It was etching on my skull, and I struggled to listen to it. And maybe it would have been fine if it was just a little bit quieter in the mix.
Yeah.
But every time it comes on, you can hear it like it's rattling through your head. And maybe I just need to listen to it with worse headphones. But but oh no, I did not like listening to that track. So yeah, some tracks I didn't like listening to, but honestly, I did enjoy listening to this album for the most part when I'm not listening to the lyrics and those two tracks that I've mentioned. So.
I think if we go on to talk about good tracks, Vengeance is a big standout. It's an example of just how hard Denzel Curry can go, and I think it has the best guest spots on the album. JPEG Mafia's verse is kind of quite funny, really, with his delivery and his repeating use of sort of I sound words, and his sort of whelp every time he says it. I think is great. But then it goes straight into Zilakami's verse, which is terrifying. One of his lines is, "My mere existence can exterminate masses." Oh,
yeah,
wow,
gets intense. But what I love about that track as well is towards the end, it just so effortlessly peters out into this more calming verse as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, where did this come from? But it works.
It really highlights the different extremities of the album. Yeah,
it works really well.
And then you compare that song to a song like Black Balloons towards the beginning of the album. It's amazing they come from the same person, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've already mentioned the nice funky bass and the dreamy qualities. I mean, the metaphor of Black Balloons as pain works as a concept to me. I like that. I mean, the references to it are a little bit on the nose, but I can sort of forgive it. It works.
Yeah, better than some of the lyrics.
Yeah.
So, another standout for me was, in the last third, The Blackest Balloon. I just love those slow lullaby synths. Everything about that track is eerie and creepy, and I love it. I genuinely love it.
I love the choice of title as well, going on from Black Balloons to The Blackest Balloon, you know, the most painful.
It's almost like one of the most upbeat and happy tracks into the most despairing track, musically that is, and love it. In fact, I'd kind of say I enjoyed the first act, the third act, but not so much the second act.
I think the second act's alright. It's got Switch It Up. Switch It Up I like. I think that's got some really great flows on it. And Mad I Got It, which I just love the hook on that one. I think it's great. But not great enough that I would like call it a favourite track. I do agree with you. I think the second section's probably the weakest. But that's only because I think Taboo, the opening track, and Black Balloons are so strong because I just don't like Cash Maniac or Sumo.
Yeah, fair enough.
I've sort of gone back and forth on what I'd like to give this album. It started off as an 8, it went down to a 5. I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I think a 6 is reasonable. I think, because for me there are a lot of highlights. Some that I really can't listen to. Like, it's a bit of an all over the place album for me in terms of what's good and what's bad about it. And sometimes the lyrics are fine, and sometimes I just don't want to pay attention to them. So, I think 6 is reasonable because there are some really good highlights.
In a world of oversaturated trap music, just really dull.
Yeah.
Like excessive amounts. It's nice to have an album which sounds as good as this in the genre.
Yeah, shout outs to Quavo. You
know. No, we don't mention him.
He's in the gulag now.
He is in the gulag.
Talking about the gulag and its many inmates, I've heard that they've been on they've had a bit of a treat courtesy of our warden there. Should we see what's going on?
Yes, James?
Hello everyone, welcome back. It's always nice when you visit. It's my only opportunity for decent musical discourse in this hellhole. Well, the generic program is coming along nicely. Well, except for Quavo, who's huddled in the corner of his cell, singing his she for keeps to himself and shivering. Sad. Anyway, I thought it was time for a little treat. So we all spent the weekend at Victorious Festival in Portsmouth, and what a treat it was. Fergie was sulking because I confiscated something from her and have banned her from fraternising with fellow inmate Will.i.am for obvious reasons. But she cheered right up when we arrived. I even brought the cheeky girls. Well, their ashes. In an urn. The first highlight of the day was a local band called Omar Baba, who played an oddly compelling cross of reggae and rap. Very enjoyable. Next up were the Pigeon Detectives, who were very good, followed by the real reason I was there. Yes, festival food. Chinese chicken balls, teriyaki sauce and rice. Yum yum. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys was next. Despite being older than Mick Jagger, he went through all the old favourites. Sloop John B, Surfin' USA, Fun Fun Fun, Good Vibrations, Wouldn't It Be Nice, God Only Knows, and many more. He wasn't quite up to it, but he had some younger backing singers, so it was still a great performance. Katy Perry had no idea what was going on. Poor deprived creature. The Saturday finished with an excellent set from Paul Weller, including well-known hits like That's Entertainment, You Do Something to Me, and of course A Town Called Malice, which was recently covered so well by Nick and Joe. Sunday was very wet, so we found solace in the comedy tent. We saw Nathan Eagle, Ray Ray Lloydie, Lucy B, and Sanjay Arif. The weather had calmed down a bit, but several stages were closed due to this. Unfortunately, the Sleaford mods were on the main stage. My goodness, they're shit. Gulag out of 10. The weekend finished with The Prodigy, and a light show my eyes will never forgive me for. They sang Firestarter and Smack My Bitch Up and many more. It was like nothing else, a completely unique experience. And so, back across the Solent to the Gulag. You know, I'm in such a good mood, it may be time to call in the parole officer. Well, goodbye. Don't talk to Taylor Swift if you can help it. She might write a song about you. Yuck.
That wasn't that a fun little outing.
Yeah, I'm glad that James has shown that he does have a heart.
Yeah, it's good to have some kindness. Maybe
like underneath all of that machinery that makes up his soulless body.
Yeah. And hopefully Fergie learnt something, who knows?
Yeah.
Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about the new Koenji Hyakkei album. Hyakkei, did I say that right?
Hyakkei.
Hyakkei. It's K. Koenji Hyakkei. That's what I get for choosing so many foreign artists to talk about. The new Koenji Hyakkei album, Dhorimvishka. So I kind of wanted to talk about this album. I mean, I do like it, but I also wanted to talk about it because we haven't really talked about Zeal music before on the podcast.
I didn't know it was a thing.
Well, the best way to describe Zeal music to people who haven't listened to it is that it's what people who haven't listened to progressive rock imagine progressive rock to sound like.
Yeah, that's a decent description. Do you want to hear my description?
Go on.
Okay, so I remember back when I was in secondary school, it was around that time, loads of videos were being put on YouTube by guitarists called Bet You Can't Play This, and it would just be the most intense wankery of guitars that you could imagine, and they all sounded terrible. I'm not saying this sounds terrible, but this does strike me as the Bet You Can't Play This of composing. It does seem very much like it's like, look how wild we can be. I mean, technically it is a very thorough and impressively composed album, but it does just all meld into a huge mess of wankery to me.
Okay, I disagree. I mean, I disagree. I agree with your just description of, to a degree. But for me, I was actually quite impressed with how much variety I found within the album. I mean, I do get what you mean that it seems like a mess, and in a way, Zeal music is almost intentionally designed to kind of seem like a mess. You've got these passages of improvisation which suddenly flip-flop around these kind of really well-composed, structured sections. A lot of the language is made up. I believe that is the case for this band. It's just completely made-up language. A lot of free-form nonsense. It is chaotic. But I actually found there was quite a bit of variety in the album. You've got... I'll tell you what, one of the most fun things about this album is trying to say the album titles, because they're made up as well. So the second track, Levorm, I really liked the funk chord progressions in that one, and it translated really well onto the instrumentation they use as well, because they use quite standard progressive rock instruments, but they use a lot of clean sounds but played very dirtily, if you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
And that gives it a really nice overall feel to the album. The way they interplay with these different genres really work well. Like in the penultimate track, Palbeth Tisalak, you get a lot more influence from traditional Japanese music, which works really, really well with the touch of jazz as well. And you've got different tracks like Shandaig that incorporates the jovial melodies as well as the more intense, bizarre vocal performances that you can hear on this album. So yeah, I did enjoy a bit of variety within the very cohesive sound.
I mean, for me, it's probably just that I'm not that fond of the genre, perhaps. I mean, the same goes for like really, really clean, like technical metal. I just don't care for it. But to me, it just strikes me as a more messy version of what Igor does.
Well, Igor do take influence from Zeal music, so
I just feel like
yeah.
I like how the music they do is a little bit more refined.
Yeah. I think, I mean, that's absolutely fair. Not everyone's going to be, in favour of the more
don't get me wrong, I don't hate this album at all. In fact, there are passages of it that I do like, but it's just too much for me.
Oh, poor Nick. I very much enjoyed this album. I'm not sure how much more I have to say other than the drumming is fantastic in this album. Yoshida Tatsuya, who is apparently quite a celebrated drummer in Japan, so I am informed. So, yeah.
From your sources.
Yeah, from my sources. Good old Wikipedia. I thought a lot of the performances were on point, really. The bass work, the guitar work, even the wild, maniacal vocal, like female operatic vocals. So yeah, I really enjoyed this album. Not sure I've got an awful lot more to say on it.
I don't really feel like I'm in a position to give it like a score out of 10, to be honest. So I'll just say you might like it more than I do.
Out of 10.
Yeah.
I personally give it an 8 out of 10 because there are one or two projects from Koenji Hyakkei that I would say I perhaps like a little bit more. But it is a difficult genre to kind of score because it is such a small genre. There are so few, like this genre started in France and there were like a few French bands, and then like a few decades later, it was picked up by a couple of Japanese bands, and then that's it, basically.
The more
That's
you know.
it. So yeah, nice little bit of context for you there.
Well, let's move on to something a bit simpler.
A little bit simpler, yeah. Let's talk about the new Let's Eat Grandma album. I still don't know how I feel about their band name.
It's a bit.
It's a bit.
Well, this album is the follow-up to their 2016 release, I Gemini. Fun fact: I got that album brought for me for my birthday in May, and I still haven't listened to it.
Naughty Nick.
But their new album is called I'm All Ears, and it's full synth pop.
Full synth pop.
A bit of a departure from their sort of neo-folk previous album.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it does branch off a little bit than just kind of synth pop, but that is basically what this album is.
There are a couple of tracks here and there which are a bit different.
Yeah. But yeah, I wanted to kind of highlight this album because it's one of those albums that kind of goes, like, I do like the album overall, but it does go a little bit up and down in terms of how much I like it. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about it and
decide at the end of it what you think.
Decide, yeah.
Well, I think that there are a lot of good ideas on this album. I just think that they're not always structured well in the context of either individual songs or the album as a whole. For example, the opening two tracks are pretty much unlike anything else on the album, setting up a false sense of expectation, and I don't really care for that.
I agree with Hot Pink. I do think Whitewater sets up a cinematic tone, which I do think is brought back on a few of the other songs on the album, like The Cat's Pyjamas, which was a short interlude track, which was actually one of my favourites. It has these really ghostly, circusy synths that were kind of creepy but cute in the same way.
I didn't get any creepy vibes from that track.
Oh, I mean creepy, but not in a creepy way. Creepy in a kind of cute way.
Okay.
Like
Halloween.
Yeah, that kind of way. But I do think Whitewater sets up a cinematic tone that is followed upon. Hot Pink, I agree, because that was produced by Sophie.
Yeah, I thought while I was listening to it, this sounds exactly like a Sophie track.
Yeah.
It turns out it pretty much was.
Yeah. And I actually quite like the song Hot Pink.
Hot Pink's one of my favourites on the album.
Yeah, I mean, it has those weird... How do you even describe those Sophie-esque synths?
Wonderfully inventive.
Yes.
Like quite direct, in your face, abrasive, but simultaneously very melodic and quite percussive as well.
Yeah. And it works really nicely.
Very jagged.
Oh, I like that word.
Jagged rhythms.
Jagged.
Really, and they really drove home the disdain felt in the lyrics on that track, being about how ideas of femininity and masculine expectations are just bullshit. I mean, the bridge chant, like of them yelling "Hot Pink," it just expresses this joy of self-acceptance, which I love. But no, those first two tracks on the album, Whitewater and Hot Pink, don't. All the other songs on the album sound very different in my opinion.
Yeah, they don't have that same jaggedness.
I mean, I think they're both decent tracks. Not so like I prefer the Hot Pink to Whitewater because I don't feel like it builds up to any conceptual payoff, which is a shame. As far as the album structure goes, the only other thing that I would mention is Ava, which is quite a nice track, but comes in between two of the longest tracks on the album and is just a simple piano ballad.
To me, that song reminded me of The National, of all things.
Yeah, same.
So yeah, I did, and it does have some nice lyrics. I should mention the lyrics on the album because overall I thought they were quite good. Like, you wouldn't really find any cliches or anything like that. But I did also find that while I appreciated them, they didn't always resonate with me. So I found it quite easy to switch off them, and maybe that's just because this album isn't for me in that respect.
Yeah, I thought the lyrics were sort of above average, but not to the level that I would, call them out and go, look, amazing lyrics. In the same way that I would with a band like, say, The National or Sufjan Stevens.
Yeah.
As far as individual song structures go, I think Cool and Collected needed to be more concise. and songs like White Water and Falling Into Me seem to build up a whole lot with no particularly satisfying payoff.
I agree with you on Cool and Collected because that's my least favourite song.
That's probably my least favourite.
That is the one track that kind of had this build up but didn't pay off. But the other two tracks you mentioned, I enjoyed. I thought,
fair enough.
I thought they were structured
You
well.
are allowed to enjoy music.
Because Cool and Collected, it is a very long track. It's something like 8 or 9 minutes.
9 minutes.
But then in contrast, you've got the final track, which is one of my favourites.
Donnie Darko.
And that's even longer, but it's so much, it's better paced.
Yeah.
It's so much better paced. It does start off slow, but then the magic turns on kind of 3 minutes in with the synth change. It bounces up and it goes through these sections that are quite bittersweet, really. It's about finding...
Donnie Darko's at my window.
Yeah, it's a lovely song. And I thought it was a great finishing point on the album as well. So I'll definitely give it a point for that one.
I think it's good. I think it's another one which I think is a tiny bit too extended, but nowhere near to the same level as Cool and Collected. I mean, I do like Donnie Darko a lot. Not my favourite track on the album, though, because that is I Will Be Waiting For You.
Yeah.
That just gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. There's
It's such a lovely melody.
very ethereal lyricism in it, going back to the lyrics again, the production as well, matching that, oh, joy to listen to, and I think the vocal performance is just gorgeously understated.
Yeah, I agree. And I do like how that follows on into the Cat's Pyjamas. I've already mentioned that.
Yeah, Cat's Pyjamas, I mean, I think that as interlude tracks, they don't really add much to the album as a concept. But the Cat's Pyjamas,
Cat's Pyjamas.
It's these lovely synth tones. You've said almost circus-esque, just played over the sound of a cat eating and purring, and that fills me with joy.
It's so lovely.
My other least favourite track on the album, though, is actually the other interlude track, Missed Call, open brackets, 1, close brackets, because it's, I mean, dull.
I didn't get that, because I think it could have been more interesting if they developed it, because there is that point where it is basically plucked strings. They get a little bit more rhythmically...
Yeah, they sort of double up.
Yeah, a bit more complex, but then it kind of fades back out into the start.
I think it's meant to sound like a ringtone based on the title of the song, but it just makes me question why.
I didn't interpret it that way, but that could be the case. I mean, for me, it just seemed a little bit weird after Snakes and Ladders, because that's a very broody 6/8, quiet and intense piece, which I actually quite enjoyed. And then suddenly having these plucky strings seemed very out of place for me. I mean, it did seem in place in terms of that it kind of fit in with the cinematic feel of the album, I would say. But other than that, it just felt a little bit, what's this?
Maybe we're meant to be sitting in a cinema experiencing this, and that's the person whose phone goes off in the middle of a film viewing, and you hate them because of it, and that's why I don't like this track.
So yeah, we're supposed to be we're supposed to be annoyed with it. I like that interpretation.
It's now canon.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have much else to say besides the fact that I think that the production on this album is generally very good.
Yeah.
Everything like melds and nothing ever overshadows anything else, as far as I'm aware. I love how eerie a lot of the synth tones are on the album. I do love me some eerie synth tones.
As do I.
I mean, just generally, all manner of emotions are evoked through not just the tones, but the rhythms and the textures of each track as well.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree. I'm still not sure exactly how I feel about this album. All I know is that it's only Cool and Collected and Missed Call that I'm not so much a fan on. I pretty much like every single of the tracks, so...
That's another one I'm going to give a 7 out of 10 to.
Because it nearly went up to a 9 at one point, but then it went down to like a 7, so... a non-committal strong 7, light 8, I'm going to say. I still would recommend checking out this album if you like synthpop, because you'll more than likely find a track that you will like.
The first time I listened to it, I thought, this is what I wanted churches to sound like.
Right, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Well, that's the end of the albums we're going to go into in depth, but as we have been on hiatus for quite a while, there are quite a few albums we have missed that we could have talked about. Yeah. So I think we're just going to do a quick sort of rundown of each of those.
Yeah.
I'm going to just sort of read out the ones I've got listed here. If you've listened to them, you can give your opinion.
Sure.
So, first of all, we've got Kids See Ghost with their self-titled album. It's the duo of Kanye West and Kid Cudi. For me, it's got great production. I think Kanye West just generally does great production on his tracks, but all of the songs on it are structured in exactly the same way. You know, sort of the Kanye verse and the Kid Cudi verse, as if neither of them really want to step on each other's toes or do anything particularly interesting. I think some of the tracks are a bit indulgent and others just don't feel finished.
What I will say is that I enjoyed my time with the album, but I didn't get so much of the hype around it, if I'm going to be completely honest, because I've been seeing so many people saying, oh, this is a psychedelic rap masterpiece, and I'm just like,
Cough, 10 out of 10 Anthony Fantana.
Well, I'm just sitting here like, do people really find this that psychedelic?
I don't get it.
I don't. I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked it as an album. I thought it had some highlights, but I'm not buying into the hype personally.
I mean, tracks like Cudi Montage I thought were great, but I don't think it's good enough to warrant the amount of hype. I would give it a 6 out of 10.
6 to 7.
Yeah. Next up, Sophie. Oil of Every Person's Insides.
Yeah, this is one that I initially wanted to talk about before we went on the hiatus, and I know me and Nick disagree on this one.
I don't think I mean, it's grown on me a bit since the disagreeal, but I do think that you see more in it than I do. My opinion, very well produced, very inventive, but once I got past the weirdness of the album, I found myself getting bored by a lot of the tracks very quickly, especially the final track, which the name has slipped my mind, but it's long and
Brand New World or something like that.
It's just long and it bores me. I do like the fact that the album title Oil of Every Pearl's insides meant to be said as I love every person's insides. I mean, all the tracks on the album sounded completely different, and the idea that she's loving all these different people, all these different souls, and love being shown in all manner of different ways. I do love that interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I liked the variety of the album, but I do think she has a very particularly unique way of adding both softness and abrasiveness into her tracks, sometimes at the same time, which is something I just found interesting and really appreciated. So that's why I would personally give it a high score. But,
I would give it a 6 out of 10.
8 out of 10 for me personally.
Next up, 9 Inch Nails, Bad Witch.
Yes.
I mean, it made my blood pump with some of the fantastically bizarre compositional choices, but it just hasn't left a lasting impression on me. I barely remember any of the tracks on it, to be honest.
I would say the same, but because I do remember having a very good experience with it, I'd kind of say a 7 out of 10 on that one.
Yeah, I was thinking 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Probably more 7. Panic at the Disco, Pray for the Wicked. It is forgettable trash.
I listened to that album and I just thought it was the most painfully average thing I'd ever heard. There was like maybe 1 or 2 decent tracks, but they kind of got lost.
It's worse than bad, it's mediocre.
Yeah, so it's worse than Fall Out Boy.
I would give it 2 verging on 3 out of 10.
I'm not going to bother rating it.
Kamasi Washington, Heaven and Earth.
Okay.
This is more concise than his last album, The Epic, which was 3 hours. This is only 2 hours. I also didn't find it quite as fresh or exciting. I think it's still well worth a listen, but...
Yeah. What I will say is that he did come up with a third section to that project called The Choice, which was like an extra album, possibly, of kind of cutouts from the main thing. But I found like the first disc, which was Heaven, to be like not as compelling. And then the second disc a lot more compelling. And I just thought to myself, this is one of those times when you should have just taken your best tracks from all 3 of the albums. It could have been a 70-minute album, still a long run, and it'd be like maybe even a 9 out of 10.
That's sort of how I felt.
So I still love Kamasi Washington. Still love him.
I would still give this probably a 7.
I would say if you like jazz, give it a go.
Yeah.
But you'll probably just want to be downloading the highlights, really. Florence
and the Machine, High as Hope. It's a bit more ethereal than her works, and it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I think it's a very nice background listen, but I don't really have any strong opinions on it, other than Florence has a nice voice and always has.
I actually haven't listened to it.
It's fair enough. Death Grips, Year of the Snitch. Death Grips Light, kind of refreshing in a way, but also featuring some of their least interesting work since Government Plates.
I listened to it, but I cannot remember it.
Well, I'm going to take a slight detour from this section now to talk about the fact that I actually went and saw Death Grips last night. I don't know if I've been talking louder during this podcast than usual, but my ears are actually still ringing at this point. It's far and away the loudest gig I've ever been to. Also by far the most violent. I'm pretty sure I've got bruises on my body. Someone jumped off the balcony. Like, holy shit. Someone jumped off the balcony. The sound quality coming from the band was dreadful. I couldn't make out a single word MC Ride was saying. Everything was just a smash of noise, and I didn't even know what half the tracks were when they were playing. But for the atmosphere, oh my god. I have never burned that many calories in my life. But yeah, it was just so loud. One thing that did piss me off was, you know, you come upstairs, at any gig they're playing the music to get you sort of hyped up a bit before the support band come on or the main band come on. Instead, they played a few Beastie Boys tracks, then at 8 o'clock, just this sound of just like... came on, but as soon as it got to a certain pitch, a few octaves down, another sound would come in and start rising up. So there was just a constant rising up of sound for the next hour. An entire hour of that. There wasn't a support band. I said jokingly to my friend, "Oh, you think this is bigging up something? No, this is the next half an hour, this is a support band." I thought I was kidding, and I was wrong, and it was horrible.
Oh, dear me.
It was horrible. And when they came on, they played an uninterrupted set. There were no breaks between any of their songs. There wasn't a moment where you could relax.
That's pretty impressive.
I don't imagine, especially with Zach Hill drumming in that way. Oh my life.
How long did they play for?
I think they played for a bit over an hour. They played 20 songs. But because they were all, you know, there were no gaps, it just went by. But like I said, I could only pick out some of the more noticeable songs. They didn't play Hyakkei, which was a shame because that's my favourite song by them. But what can you do?
Okay.
I had a good time.
Hooray for Nick.
I'm surprised I survived, to be honest.
I'm personally not a fan of Death Grips, but whatever. That's by the by.
Yeah. My favourite thing about it, though, is the fact that it was their Year of the Snitch tour, and they played 2 songs from Year of the Snitch. Okay, next up, Gorillaz, The Now Now. I can't remember whether I actually listened to this album or not.
Well, after their last album, and I didn't dig it at all. I just didn't bother with this one, so...
I'm sure it's probably better.
It might be.
It might be. Mom Jeans, Puppy Love. This was another one which was hyped up a lot in the sort of emo community as being a fantastic album, and I listened to it, and it's just got some of the least inspired songwriting I can actually ever remember hearing. I just really don't like this album. I do not understand the hype around it. It's just so boring. I'd give it like a 2 out of 10.
Wow. I mean, I don't really listen to emo music, but... wow.
Death Heaven, Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. It's got really blistering performances, that's for sure. But unlike Sunbather and probably New Bermuda Tourist, it does fall into some post-rock cliche areas a bit. I don't think it's a bad album. I think there are moments of spectacular beauty on it. I just think that it's not as fresh or original as the band Have Sound.
I think I feel the same. I think it's good, but not more than good.
The track Glint is excellent, though. I will happily listen to that forever. Between the Buried and Me, Automata Part 2. So we reviewed Part 1 before on the podcast. and we both liked it. We both gave it 7s, I think.
Yeah.
I actually think that this is the most interesting and engaging the band have sounded in a very long time. I have a lot of time for this album.
Yeah.
I would give it a strong 8.
I have listened to this album, but I think it just fell off my radar with so many other things to listen to, so I do need to go back to it and see what I properly think.
Me Without You, Untitled EP. I've only sort of recently gotten into Me Without You when I saw them supporting Paramore. It was quite funny because I don't think anyone there really cared for them. I just know they're friends of the band, which is probably why they got the supporting act. And I walked out of there carrying one of their vinyls, which I brought from the merch stand, and having other Paramore fans just look at me like, what? This is a sort of a gentler release from the band. I think it's meant to be a sort of calm between the storm between their last album, Pale Horses, and their upcoming Untitled album. But I mean, it packs atmosphere and once again proves that Aaron Weiss is one of the best lyricists going. I'd just probably give it an 8. I liked it a fair amount. And take it you haven't listened to it. Ken Mode, loved. I mean, it's exactly what a good hardcore album should be. Raw, aggressive, punchy, at times terrifying. Beyond that, I don't think it's, really pushing the boat out. I'd give it a 7. Blood Orange, Negro Swan, from Dev Hynes, who I always known as Lightspeed Champion, and to see him go into the world of R&B was quite interesting. This album is dreamy, sensual, less engaging than Freetown Sound, though. Very easy to get lost in. I would give it a 7. Okay. I feel like I'm just going through albums you haven't heard now. Interpol, Marauder. You can hear all of the potential being wasted throughout this album, just trying to squeeze through the gaps, just begging to be free, and it never really gets the opportunity.
I thought that album was average.
Yeah, I'd give it
personally.
like a 4 or a 5. Okay, and now we've got a couple of albums which only came out this weekend, so I've only listened to each of them a couple of times. So we've got Idols, Joy is an Act of Resistance. It's actually made me laugh out loud quite a few times. I think the lyricism on that album is great. It's actually also very depressing at times. The bit where he's repeating the line, baby shoes for sale, never worn, just breaks my heart. I mean, I can't tell yet because I haven't listened to it enough, but I think it might actually be a step up from their last album. I take it you haven't bothered to listen to it because it's a punk album.
Correct.
Yep. And then we've got the Pineapple Thief, Dissolution. Do you want to start talking about this?
I only got a chance to listen to it once, so I haven't been able to form any opinions on it yet.
Fair enough. I've listened to it twice. It's got Gavin Harrison on it on drums, and Gavin Harrison, to me, is the undisputed king of modern prog drummers. His work with Porcupine Tree is amazing. Yep. That being said, this is just watered down Porcupine Tree to me, and I just didn't really care for this album. I'd give it a 5. You'll probably like it more than I do.
I probably will, but I haven't because when I was listening to it, I was putting together a bed, so there was a lot of clanging and other noises involved. So
well, maybe that's how you're meant to listen to it, putting together a bed.
Yeah, perhaps. I've got 2 more on my list. This isn't all the albums I've listened to because that'd take forever. Nicki Minaj released an album, and
that's how I felt.
I was very disappointed. I mean, it's too long. It's 20 tracks. It's 70 minutes. There's no need for an album
There are very few albums that need to be that length.
Especially when there's so, I just didn't care for so much of it. You know, when we reviewed Chun-Li, I said, okay, maybe she's on something interesting here. No, that's actually the best track on the album. So apart from a couple of singles, not really worth the time. Also, Drake released an album. Yeah, it was trash.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And then there's one more album that came out, which we haven't... Eminem's album, Kamikaze. I haven't had a chance to listen to it because I've been so busy this weekend, but I can already tell you as a fact it's better than Revival.
It's funny because I also haven't listened to it, but I've still got notes on it. It's just that I don't plan on listening to it after... he hasn't been relevant for over a decade, and people keep making him relevant, and I'm just I'm very tired. To be honest, I'm really a fan to begin with, but I think that's just me not really appreciating what he does when he does it well anyway. but at this point he's just like an angry old man yelling at
Yeah.
clouds, and I don't want to deal with
I
it.
just think it's hilarious that we live in a world where Tyler the Creator has matured faster than Eminem has.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to shout out, which I was told this weekend by a friend, which is rapper Earl Sweatshirt was asked what he thought of Eminem, and he said, "If you still listen to Eminem, you either drink too much Mountain Dew or you need to come home from the army."
Oh, savage.
Absolutely savage.
So yeah, without listening to that album, we already have opinions on it. To be honest, I don't intend on listening to it.
Probably don't. I've
So,
got better things to do with my time.
yeah.
Like listening to the new Idols album again. And not listening to the new Interpol album again.
Indeed. Well, I think we're done for the podcast now.
Yeah, a bit longer than our usual one, but we did have a lot to catch up on.
Indeed.
So hopefully this will go back to being at least semi-regular. Probably not every 2 weeks for a bit, because Joe is still...
I'm still a very weak and feeble creature.
Yeah. We have to give him a big round of applause for driving over here.
I managed it.
It's a mental round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you. Much appreciated.
Yeah. As for shout-outs, we have to mention our good friend Stace.
Yeah, because she's got back to podcasting herself now after a bit of a hiatus herself.
So Stacey's Pop Culture Parlour. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
That makes me happy. Yes, it's the best podcast, better than ours. Go listen to it. Like, Stacey is great.
Yeah.
Also, I have to mention that we have social media.
Do we?
Yeah.
Ugh.
We have Twitter, which I use every so often. Facebook, which we don't use because no one advertises themselves via Facebook anymore. I got Instagram recently. I might try using that at some point. In fact,
I never bothered with Instagram.
I'm going to take this opportunity to take a picture of our setup live on the recording so that I can upload it to our Instagram. Wait, one sec. You get a nice picture of Joe's crotch in this. There we go.
Lovely.
Joe's crotch for your enjoyment. And yeah, that's about it. We'll be back soon.
Soon-ish, maybe. Bye.
Bye. F sharp. A sharp. Revisited.